Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman by heading over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
All right, I'm talking quickly because it is time to begin. Oh my goodness, Dave, we're here. Look around you.
Shit.
Oh, fuck. Oh, good news, everyone. Zoidberg sound. Man, so I want to start unorthodoxly because this is a premiere episode of a brand new pod that is a joint venture between Small Beans, represented by me, Michael Swaim, and...
Oh, shit. Gamefully Unemployed, represented by me, David Bell.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, first, I just want to express how excited I am to just do a thing with you, dude.
Samesies.
So cool.
Man, we've I don't think we've ever, we've, of course, appeared together on podcasts, but
Right.
we've never had,
plenty.
any sort of joint venture. Who knows?
No.
Who knows what's going to happen, you know?
Where we were the two driving forces, or
Right.
the dicks in the hole in the ground. So to speak.
Exactly. We might destroy each other. We don't know.
I feel like every comedian, especially in just casual conversation, is like a different musical instrument. Or, Peter and the Wolf, like everyone has a different theme or a vibe. And I always wonder what kind of peanut butter chocolate combination I'm going to get. Like improving with Cody is so specific.
Mm-hmm.
Improving with Daniel's very different. I just can't wait. So let's, you want to tell people what this actually is, what the combo of it all is?
Well, I actually feel like you should, because you came to me
All right.
with this.
See, you're already
I
learning
can
one of my hosting idiosyncrasies is to put the other host on the spot when I think I've spoken for too long.
No, I wouldn't worry about that. We're both big old TNG fans, right?
There it is. He spilled the tea.
Yeah.
That's the big secret. Yeah, TNG specifically. Okay, so it's a little rocky. It's first episode. It's a little unstructured. We'll get there, folks. Just
I
bear
love
with us.
unstructured.
Me too.
It's
But
fine.
something I know I did want to do for the first time, and we won't really do again, is let's do a little backstory of our Star Trek cred. Like, what are your Star Trek credentials and relationship at this point? And then we'll do this. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was actually gonna frame this as just when I first heard your name, being a fan of Cracked and stuff, and seeing you guys did a TNG rap, and I remember that very vividly. And I remember thinking, oh, these people like Star Trek like me, therefore I like them. Yeah, I grew up with TNG. It was probably the first show I remember ever seeing. My parents watched it. I still have an ongoing game where my mom will every now and then text me a frame from an episode and be like, "What's this episode? What's this called?" And
That's great.
Oh yeah, I used to be
That's
better
fun.
at it, naming the episode. But yeah, it's just been there my whole life. And I talking to you, it seems like the same. And for a lot of people, I imagine.
The same but different. Yeah, so what's, just for thoroughness sake, and then what's your status with DS9 and Voyager? The other ones we'll be covering in our purview, really.
I have watched DS9. It's been a minute. I am now starting Voyager. I never really watched Voyager. I've seen episodes here and there. I like my sweet spot. Again, like a lot of people, is TNG, right?
Yeah.
And then the farther we get from TNG, the more astray we get
Right.
from the core of what makes Star Trek.
What it makes it work for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so on my end, I definitely grew up watching it. My dad was obsessed and, sat us down and we watched it as a family and would have long conversations, which I think is what this podcast is going to be. And I'm so excited about the philosophical core of so that was about justice. What did you think about that? Do you think Data's sentient or what have you? And it was just a great way for my family to have essentially prompts to talk about something other than what happened at school today. And I loved it for that. I will say there's a bunch of blind spots for me. And I think because of the Star Trek rap, I don't want to overstay my credentials. So I watched TNG for the first time shortly before we came up with the Star Trek rap. That's why we came right. I was being steeped in it. And I was like, oh, I want to do jokes about this now because that's how comedians' brains work. And I haven't seen the original series. And literally 40 minutes before we started recording, I just finished DS9 for the first time. So my cheeks are still drying from the tears.
Congratulations.
And I started Voyager and cut it. I paused it to record this. So, and then the biggest thing is I didn't watch All Good Things. And to this day, I've seen every episode of TNG many times, but I've never watched All Good Things, the series finale.
What?
Because I think it would be too painful. And so I think I will have to watch it for this podcast for the first time.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I think you might be... Like, it's not like the ending of 6 Feet Under or anything. It's not like a tearjerker.
I'm worried about what happens to Picard. But now, obviously, the sting is taken out because Picard exists, the other show.
All Good Things, and it's actually been a minute because do you have this thing where, like, if you... Like, I'm at this point with Star Trek where I don't necessarily watch it sequentially. I skip around. I have a similar thing with the X-Files, where it's like I've gone through the series so many times. So for that reason, often will you skip the finale just on a regular watch because it always feels weird, right? To like stick that into a random rewatch. For that reason, I haven't seen it in a while. But without spoiling anything, I don't remember it being a particularly like sad episode. It's sad because the series is ending, but I remember it being somewhat positive and has a very interesting, I guess you could call it twist, not really a twist. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on that.
We'll get there. But before we do, there's a whole, at the risk of making the podcast way too long, there's a whole other component to this, which is another little show called Futurama.
That's correct.
And I will just say that the origin of this podcast, really what it comes down to, was a crystallizing moment because I am falling in love with TNG. I just started rewatching it and it really clicked in a way that it hadn't before, as like now DS9 has done it too, where I'm like, this is an important show. And I was listening to you on a Gamefully pod, I forget specifically what series, but mentioning how other than things that are like iterations of it, like the Orville or whatever, there's not a lot of, it's basically the utopic science fiction since Utopia, literally the book that like coined the term, which was sci-fi because it was, about an island where they had special technologies and shit. So it was technically a sci-fi story about a theoretical utopia. Star Trek is, and by that, I think we both mean, but correct me if you have a different definition, Dave, sci-fi that takes as its basic conceit that generally humans will get better and better as the future goes on. So if you're going to predict the future, you're optimistic. You see if you were optimistic, what would the future be like?
Right.
Whereas 99% of sci-fi is if something was terribly bad, what would it be like?
I think the key detail I always bring up about TNG and Star Trek of that era, I can't speak for Discovery. I'm actually for this specific reason, I'm not a big fan of all the prequel stuff because I think what was really amazing about TNG to DS9 to Voyager is that in those series, instead of defeating enemies, we would just assimilate with them. They would become, the Ferengi are a villain in TNG, and they are just on DS9. The Klingons were villains. The process is always peace. It's not that we defeat anybody. Even the Borg, we eventually get like a half Borg, and in TNG we even get episodes empathizing with the Borg. So that was always the poor Hugh. That's always the central idea behind Star Trek, right? As opposed to something like Star Wars, where it's like the enemy doesn't need to be eradicated. That's what made the Borg so scary, is because they were the first villain that we couldn't really relate to. But yeah, just going back to that in Futurama, when I needed to sleep at night, I used to put on a YouTube loop of the sounds of the Enterprise.
Wait, what? Me too.
Yeah.
We've never talked about this?
No.
This is crazy. I thought you were going to say I used to put on this show, and I was about to say I put on a YouTube loop. The sounds
10
holy
hours.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We probably wow. You know those shows where they're like, all that time we were wishing on the same star. We were probably sleeping in college to the same fucking YouTube video.
Probably,
it has
yeah.
like 8 million views. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a genius
Mine
thing
was
to put
10
out.
hours too. It's got to be the same one. That's
It has to be.
amazing.
And I think that stems from just the gut feeling since my childhood. I want to live in that world. I want to live on the Enterprise. Whenever I see the rooms that they have, I'm like, I
Those
want that.
carpeted starships.
Yeah. That like retro future. Like whenever I'd go to like Epcot Center at Disney or like Tomorrowland type future, where it's like, oh yeah, look at that bullshit. Look at that hilarious approximation of the future from the 90s. But I realized recently that I feel similar about Futurama because of what we're getting at, which is that they're the only two sci-fi that's just like, the future isn't bad.
And I think we'll end up talking at length about whether Futurama is a reflection of Star Trek and to what degree. Because it certainly is of its own admission, or you know what I mean? Like, they make jokes that are like, this obviously can't. We are Star Trek nerds. The people who wrote this are Star Trek nerds versus Star Wars nerds. We reference Star Trek more. We like Star Trek more. And references are the fabric of the reality of Futurama. Therefore, they're like, there is, they make the dupe in reference to the Federation, but now it's technically world building in Futurama. There's the dupe,
right?
The diplomatic order of planets. That's it, headed by a filthy neutral. And so so on the other hand, Futurama is the show that I think most defines my humor, my style of writing. If I could have written for any show, I would have chosen Futurama over Simpsons, over Arrested D, which are the two other contenders. Like, to me, Futurama is the pinnacle of the kind of jokes that I like. So it was a no-brainer to get together, do the show that we're now 15 minutes into, and we haven't begun, so let's start it.
We haven't even told people what the premise of the show is.
Is Star Trek The Next Futurama.
Welcome to Star Trek The Next Futurama, an epic team-up between Gamefully Unemployed and Small Beans. For access to the entire series, find us on Patreon. And now your hosts, Mike and Dave.
Then the intro will play.
Yes.
All right, explain what the show is then.
Oh, well,
that's next.
Well, hey, listen here.
Ugh.
What we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be taking a Futurama episode, and we're gonna be taking a Star Trek episode, and we're putting them side by side.
Hubba hubba.
Yeah, to dissect the fact that you can match most Star Treks with most Futuramas in terms of their plot or their overall theme. We're going to be going in the order of, I believe, the Futurama episodes.
That's right. And that's simply because there are
less Futuramas than Star Treks,
right?
So there's a bigger pool of Star Treks to match with Futurama. I gotta say, it's not going to always be 1-to-1. It's not always going to be these brilliant matchups.
Great, we've come to our first argument. I disagree. I think every single one connects to a degree that will stand, like, you'll understand why this is a brilliant idea for a podcast, because it's amazing how they match. And they match in ways that I don't think are just, well, that's literally a reference to Star Trek, that's why it matches. No. There's shit that just, they grew up on Star Trek, and there's stuff that just oozed through their DNA into the scripts.
I definitely agree with you there, is that there's an argument to be made, which is like, well, they're both, Futurama is inspired by Star Trek.
So I'm over-promising.
So of course.
We haven't even done all the legwork, but I'm just promising now, every single episode will match so well, you will shoot a loved one in the face.
We will get a Nobel Prize for this podcast.
We're going to be laureates, bitch. I love symposia. Yeah, so is that all the brain dump stuff? Are we ready to do what would be a normal episode of the podcast once it's rolling? I think we are. Oh, I want to do one thing.
Okay.
Which is let me bring things down for a moment. Talk a little business. Step into my office. It's Star Trek Futurama themed. This is free. You're listening to it, right? And we didn't get money from you. But eventually, this show will also be behind the paywalls, the various paywalls of our Patreons, and it will alternate as part of the combo theme. So
that's how we get you.
That's how we get you,
motherfuckers.
See? If you want to hear every single episode of hundreds of hours of content this will ultimately be that we think will be delightful, well-researched, we will put our time in, go over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed and go over to patreon.com/smallbeans. We're brilliant. We're Ferengis right now, dude. There's so many people just went, God damn it.
Sure.
So it's time for our first segment ever of Star Trek The Next Futurama. Here comes a good news number one.
Good news number one.
And this is a segment where we call out the pairing. So this is all about which episode of TNG, and we might bend the rules and go into DS9 or Voyager, but no others, where we went with the pairing and what episode we finally landed on and why. Now, obviously on the Futurama end, which is what we're doing the watch order in, it'll become second nature. We're talking Space Pilot 3000, the very first episode, set in real time, I believe, or wasn't it right around Y2K when it aired? It aired in 1999, right?
It's definitely 1999. I don't think it's because I just looked at it was around April, I think.
Okay.
Or March rather. So we're right on the anniversary.
The turn of the millennia's Futurama set to debut. If you've been living under a space rock, everyone was amped if they liked The Simpsons, which was in its heyday and golden age at the time. So every fucking one liked The Simpsons. And this was the new thing from a bunch of The Simpsons people. And here it comes at us. Now, Dave, what episode of TNG did we pair with this Futurama?
We chose the neutral zone, didn't we?
We did indeed. Can you give us what's the log line for which one is the neutral zone?
This is a season 1, late season 1 episode that I would argue is you could say is a one of the less good TNG episodes. One of the more forgettable ones.
Do you hold with the classic wisdom that the show is not good till season 3? Like you said, you skip around. Do you watch 1 and 2?
Oh no, 2 is a weird one, because of the weirdness with Dr. Crusher not being there. But there's some episodes I enjoy there. That's when we meet Moriarty.
That's true. You can't discount that.
No, you can't. For me, there's no bad season. There's definitely episodes where it's like, especially the last season, where it's like, oh yeah, they're running out of ideas. But I always find a charm to a lot of that stuff. Same as I do with the X-Files. I love every part of it, even the parts that are, not perfect. And this certainly isn't a perfect episode. This is the one where they have to go to the neutral zone. Picard does. I believe this is because both of there's several stations have been attacked, right?
Yeah, Romulans and Federation stations have been destroyed in the neutral zone, and they both think the other one did it.
This is the weirdness of this episode. This is the episode where it's like the Romulans get ready.
Now.
Yeah.
It's also the episode where they introduce the idea, the lore. They're like, they're just like Vulcans, but you know how they don't have emotion? The Romulans have too much emotion. And they have wild mood swings. They're maniacal.
So this is like the introduction to the Romulans.
Yes.
But that's actually like the B story. The A story is that I believe Data and Worf, one of them detects
Data and Worf.
Yeah, a broken down
Dorf, if you will.
Dorf. Yeah, Team Dorf. They found this broken down spaceship.
First shirt done. Continue, please.
Oh, we're gonna be churning out shirts. Are you kidding me? An old spaceship from like the 20th century, like around the time you might be watching Star Trek, and they find a bunch of cryogenic pods.
That's right, Dave, but that's not all. And this is what I'm talking about when I promise that every episode of this podcast will blow your mind. They find 3 cryogenic survivors, 2 males and a female.
Yep.
And one of them is a heavy smoker, drinker, no-good-nick
country
folk singer.
Yeah.
Which is what Bender dreams of being.
Yeah, we're talking about plot similarities here. So I have to also
That's
point
right.
out that when Worf goes onto the ship, he has a mishap with one of the automatic doors. Something Fry has several times.
Well, in the Space Pilot 3000, the one I love is, because it's just such a classic twist on the system, he literally says, "Oh, one of those doors, just like Star Trek." Oh! Because it closes from the top and smashes him in the face. It's great.
It's the gags are actually like the opposites, because in Star Trek, Worf expects the door to automatically open and it doesn't, so he almost runs into it. And the cryopods look pretty much exactly like the ones from Futurama.
I didn't even think of that. They are just clear tubes, like the exact same design.
And
also, the very first thing the people hear, which would you rather hear? This was a question I wanted to ask. Would you rather hear, "Welcome to the 24th century," or "Welcome to the world of tomorrow"? If you were frozen and you woke up, would you rather have someone calmly say exactly when it is, or excitedly say, "You're just in the future generally"?
I hate to disassemble like this question, but does Futurama exist in this world, in this scenario? Because I'd much rather hear the Futurama reference when I woke up, because that'd make me know, oh, these people are cool.
Oh, you'd assume society is still so coherent that they are aware of Futurama. It can't be a million years in the future or whatever.
No,
Like,
it's just
I
that
understand.
if they do the Futurama "Welcome to the World of Tomorrow" in that voice, I just know that whoever's doing that is a Futurama fan, and so
All
they.
right, you kind of dodged the question. I meant if it really happened to you, but sure.
Okay. So not in a world where Futurama exists. That's actually an oddly hard question. I think the world of tomorrow, because that means they're like psyched about it.
I agree. Even though the other one has, you would know what century you're in immediately. I would be excited that it's just mirror neurons. I'm excited. You're excited. Like, oh, it's positive. That is the first thing I need to hear to allay my fears. I would much rather hear that than "Welcome to the 24th century, Penny." But anyway, I also wanted to point out, there's tons of connections, but the one this makes me think of is both episodes also deal with establishing the series' relationship to death, and I want to investigate both because they're both fascinating to me. So in Futurama's case, in Space Pilot 3000, in the A-plot, Fry meets Bender, and Bender is on the verge of suicide because he couldn't live after finding out that the girders he bends are used to build suicide boots. So that, I know everything in Futurama is obviously a joke, but it does imply we're going to take it seriously. I'll never say this again because that's the premise of what we do here.
Sure.
That implies a very particular, like, that's very Vonnegut, right? New York has this sort of relationship with death where it's chill. It's your choice. You can commit suicide if you want. There's even suicide booths on the corner next to Howard Johnson's. And in the Star Trek, this particular episode has Crusher say the line that for the first time, I believe, in TNG references like how they think of death.
I wrote this down too. I love that you're
equally
honing
weird.
in on
You
it.
want to, read the line.
Well, I don't know the first part. If
Oh,
you've
okay.
written down the full, I know how she references how we, the people of the past, feel about death. In the tone, it's so dismissive.
Yeah. She says, "Cryonics. It was a kind of a fad in the 20th century. People feared dying. It terrified them."
Yeah,
Like, as if it's weird.
As if it's fucking weird. It was like, wait, what? Like,
So My question is, do they not fear death in the Star Trek universe? Does that bear out?
No, it not quite, because there are.
Worf doesn't fear death.
I was about
Worf
to say
would kill
Worf
himself.
celebrates death.
Right.
When Tasha Yar dies, and like Worf has talked several times about death and how, death isn't the end. The episode where Ensign Ro and Geordi have the transporter malfunction, the next phase,
the invisible people one,
yeah, the next phase, she also believes in an afterlife. There are different aliens that have very, very serious beliefs that death isn't the end, but humans don't seem to share that nearly as much. There's several episodes. There's like an episode where Picard is just like, fuck the devil, and like has to prove the devil doesn't exist.
And I don't know if it's skewed by the fact that they're all in the armed services or they're all patriots of the Federation, so to speak.
Right.
That's what's utopic about it, I guess, is it makes you wonder, are these just the way Federation officers are? Or is that like how in our lives we expect emergency responders to be a little more like, yeah, I'm willing to die to save someone.
Right.
That's what attracted me to the job.
Which
I'm a hero.
always makes the Enterprise messed up in my mind, because he also, at one point, the guy, he's like, does he think the Enterprise is a cruise ship? He says something to that
But there's
extent.
like 800 kids on it.
Exactly. And that's what's always messed up about the Enterprise, is they're like, yeah, we have 10 forward, we have schools, but like, we'll go to fucking war, like if we need to.
So
and it's
that's-
like, maybe you shouldn't have kids here. And the thing that Beverly says, it's like, do you guys not fear death? And is it because of your society, or it's because you guys are maniacs flying through
Worf
space?
takes it hard when Jadzia Dax goes. Which kind of flies in the face. And then I wanted to ask the same thing, and it makes sense because this is the pilot episode, so they're establishing some rules of the universe. I think another interesting comparison point is in this episode, in the neutral zone, literally the point is comparing, in both episodes, because that's why we paired them, the point is comparing the 20th century to what's the future like and what are the differences and similarities, right? And in Star Trek The Next Generation, which is under this utopic banner, you hear lines like you'd expect, like, this is the 24th century, material need doesn't exist, or where's the one? A lot has changed in the last 300 years. We've eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions.
I will say that character, Ralph, I believe his name is. He's the
Bender?
the greedy. No, that's Sonny Clemens.
Oh, you mean the guy who clearly should pair with the cool 80s unfrozen business guy from Futurama?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But they spend way too much time not telling him about what has happened to
That
money.
there's no money.
Yeah, they just like let him fucking work himself up and be like, I gotta go back and find out if my bank still, like, surely my bank still exists. And they're like, they could at any point be like, dude, we had World War III. Like, there's
The
nothing
eugenics
from your
wars.
time
There's
left.
no money, dude.
Yeah.
Just relax.
But no one tells him. They're real dicks about
Until
that.
they finally tell him, and they do it, and Picard does it in a smug speech like,
Right.
You sicken me with your desire for money, which of course there isn't. You should have assumed there's no money,
Right.
you idiot.
I also love that they only send Troy later, and it's like, shouldn't you, like, what is she good for if not this exact situation? Like, they like, at one point he's like, Troy, you go in there and take care of them. And it's like, how is she not the person who greeted them?
Well, they don't send Troy out frequently. Troy is the cell phone of the Star Trek Enterprise. She would ruin so many plots that she has to just not work frequently.
Right.
But my question is there a what I'm really getting at is there a canon reason that Ferenginar, I know this is somewhat off topic, or like the whole thing with Quark and Latinum and Ferengi, why don't they have replicators, or why are they not a post-need society, or is it an affectation that their culture chooses to trade money because they like it? Is it just a
is
choice?
it a culture?
Do you know
you're
the
right,
canon reason? I'm sure
because
some Trekkie does.
replicators. No, I don't. It is very weird because replicators should make their money completely moot. I mean, this is the thing about Star Trek, right? Is that they always say, "Oh, there's no money. We work to better ourselves." Meanwhile, there's like fucking waiters at 10 Forward, and it's like, but how do you get those people to be waiters?
Right.
Like, how do you find people who are passionate about being wait staff?
Right. And
Because I got some news for you. No one is passionate about that.
I feel like they eventually landed on the idea that, well, some people seek authentic items because replicated stuff is different somehow. Like they often say the food doesn't taste the same or the drinks don't taste the same.
Right.
But interestingly, in the neutral zone, the Bender dude who died of cirrhosis of the liver, so he knows his way around a martini, the first thing he does in Bender fashion, by the way, the only trivia I'll drop, played by Tom Nuttall from Deadwood, the Bender type dude.
Oh, yeah.
But Tom Nuttall orders a martini from the replicator, and he says it is the best martini he ever tasted.
Yes.
Which is crazy to me because there's such a long history of people saying synthahol tastes like shit.
Okay. So I had to here's where I get into quality of seasons. And since I can't think of a specific example, well, besides what we're talking about, but like if you go back and watch season 1 of The X-Files, there's a scene where Mulder is sad, so he goes to a church and prays. And that is probably one of the most bizarre things when you know that Mulder is, throughout the series, like an annoying
Stone
atheist.
Cold. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I think we got season 1 problems here, right? Where they haven't quite figured everything out. Because if you remember the episode Relics, where Scotty, which was another contender for this, because it's Scotty, a relic from the past, coming to a time he doesn't understand. He doesn't like the synthahol,
Right.
For the reason, where it's like, oh yeah, this isn't as good. So
And then
I feel
there's
like they couldn't
which
they couldn't
character, but there's
decide
someone
yet.
who's like, I don't like that it doesn't give me a hangover. Oh, it's the Up the Long Ladder, the Irish guy who's like,
Right.
You gotta pay for the sin of drinking, or it's not worth it, or whatever.
Right. So like, I think this is just season 1. They hadn't figured out the canon yet,
Which
and
is
they were-
weird. Only because the original series had already fully transpired. The show's overseen by the same guy, Gene Roddenberry, and he wrote full-on technical manuals explaining the lore of he did it D&D style. Like, he understood the world, and at least he had a concept of, like, these are different races and empires, and they act
Right.
like he was into it to a nerdy degree. So I'm just wondering, it's interesting that it's not more consistent, and it leads me to, I think, what I'm exploring through the show, but I think will become one of my overarching theses on this show is like, is it possible to not even, is it impossible to achieve utopia? And is that reflected in the fact that it's impossible to even describe a coherent utopia? Because as a child, I thought TNG was fully utopic. Now as an adult, I see it as optimistic, certainly, but not a true utopia in some ways, where I think the Federation has like a lot of issues, and it's just another set of beliefs pitted against other sets of beliefs in the galaxy. Like when you get to the shit with the Gamma Quadrant, and then Futurama is intentionally that, where it's like, it is a future where all your wildest tech dreams, even beyond your optimistic dreams, have come true. Like, humanity has increased its domain unthinkably optimistically, but because it's a comedy, everything sucks though. So like, what would you call Futurama? Is it an untopia? Like, it's not a dystopia because it's not depressing.
I think there's an idea that's also in Star Trek, which is that we can advance our technology all we want, but we're still people. And like, I think of episodes like the Drumhead of Star Trek, where it's just like, yeah, people still suck in very similar ways that they always had. And Futurama, I think, that's at the core of Futurama, because so many of their episodes, especially I feel like late season, are reflecting problems of today and making it like, you know, half-assed, like futuristic. You know what I mean? Where like, you know, the robots are causing climate change, or the one where the perfect candidate everybody wants to see is Earth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Like they love pointing out that like these things will always exist in the most utopian future. And in this episode, the Neutral Zone, he mentions the Romulans to that country guy, and the country guy instantly takes to the xenophobia of the moment. is like, oh yeah, Romulans, we're not going to be inviting those to the party, will we? And the captain or whoever is like, no, we won't. And it's like,
And he's
oh
like,
yeah,
"Got
you're
it.
both.
I understand who we hate these days.
Yeah,
Check. Yeah.
there's still an enemy. There's still
and yet-
xenophobia.
And yet it's so core to Star Trek, The Next Generation specifically. That's why it's the A plot of the pilot episodes. Like, the pilot of TNG is a trial for the soul of humanity that we win. So I do think at its heart, Gene Roddenberry's message that they wanted to express through TNG is, I believe if the human soul were put on trial for all its flaws, it's more good than bad.
Right.
And this is a show about that positive message.
I'd say Futurama
yeah.
is similar.
I think so, because of the heart aspect maintained at the core. Although we'll talk about inconsistencies, I'm sure, as we get into the Fry-Leela relationship, constantly stepping forward and backward and forward and backward in weird ways.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay.
So we're
Those
all
are-
over the place. We're still in the plot similarities section, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We're doing, and maybe this will crystallize more as we do the show more, but this is supposed to be the segment where we're talking about the things that connect them. Do you want to get into talking about the philosophy of the episode? Because we're kind of verging
This
on
is
that.
hard because they kind of merge, because I have something that's good for either
Did you say
segment.
Kittimer? No, sorry.
Should we let's get into the next section, and then if there's some stuff that sort of doubles back and merges with the first section, that's all right.
Here we go.
Bite my shiny
Prime Directive.
All right. And this segment's called Bite My Shiny Prime Directive. And what that's supposed to mean is that we talk about the quote-unquote prime directive of the episodes, like on the theme of utopia or the merit of humanity against the galactic backdrop. What was this episode trying to say? And what do we think about that? And also where we dig into each specific episode may be irrelevant of their connections, by which I mean there are Futurama lines I want to quote, and they're not connected to anything. I just want to go, this line was good. Because if we don't do that, are we really hanging out talking about Futurama?
I first want to point out, and this goes into the last section, is the theme of both of these episodes is about finding purpose, right? You got to do what you got to do. It's about the idea that people have certain roles in their life that they feel obligated to be. The weird rich guy feels completely untethered when he realizes that there's no money, as opposed to the country dude who sort of rolls with it, which is very much like Bender and Futurama. Being told you have to be a certain thing or you've lost your identity in this new world is a big theme of both of these.
Although the woman that Troy counsels, who ends up having an exactly similar arc to Fry and the pilot.
Yeah, she has her
where
own Farnsworth.
She literally has a line where she Googles her name and goes, everyone I've ever known is dead, which Fry also does, but then he goes, woohoo!
Yeah.
She does that, and she finds her own Professor Farnsworth, and the note they leave her arc on is, wow, he looks just like my dead husband. And Troy's like, yeah, interesting, right? Is she going to bone her descendant? I don't understand the...
She might. I mean,
I feel
why
like
not?
it was an incesty implication, but...
Yeah, fuck it. It's the future, man. They can do whatever.
All right. Okay, dude. That's
Everybody's
good to know.
swinging in the
I'm glad
future.
we got your opinion on that out in the
No.
open in the pilot.
But both of these episodes also, going back to that feeling of comfort in these, is that they, and this isn't the only Star Trek that does this, where they do episodes where it's like, come with us. Where the one where Riker gets trapped in an alien hospital and has to fuck his way out.
First Contact.
Yeah, that's the one. The lady at the end, they're like, come with us. And she's like, oh, yeah. And she does.
Isn't that
and
the one that has Maris from...
Is
not
that who
Maris,
that is?
But, fucking on Frasier, Niles' ex. Anyway, sorry,
I
go
don't know.
on. Doesn't matter.
But I always
need
thought
Tom.
about all those moments when that happens, I'm always like, oh God, that would be so great. Like there's always a part of me that wants to get abducted by the Enterprise. And because I think what that really means is it's a secret wanting to reset your life, right? To get rid of a lot of weight or responsibility. And that's what's happening to Fry. That's what's happening to these people getting woken up, where it's like, here's the future. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it's about how people react to that idea. Although in Futurama, it's like, here's the future. You have to do these things.
Well, I also think it's about how it's just a shift in perspective. Like Fry's arc can be summed up as, I hate my life, I hate my life, I hate my life.
Yeah.
And then by the end, it's, you mean I'm going to be a delivery boy? Exactly. I'm a delivery boy.
Right.
So man, again, it's my favorite comedy, so I'm going to gush a lot. But there's no more perfect deconstruction of the hero's journey than to have, at the end of your pilot, the hero say the same line he said. It's mathematically perfect, you know what I mean?
Oh,
the
yeah.
heroes say the same line that he said at the beginning, but it means the reverse now. You can't do more opposite than that.
Oh, yeah. Because the only factor is choice. Is
now it's in the future and he thinks it's rad. It's And then in the neutral zone, it's done more, it's less crystallized because it's drama, but in steps, in clunky increments, all the cryogenically frozen people, other than Bender, who's fine immediately, come to terms with, well, now the future is, now it's this now. I guess this isn't a dream, basically, and they just come home to it. Meanwhile, in the A plot, we should have mentioned, they find out that neither the Romulans nor the Federation have stepped out of line. It was actually some other mysterious force that attacked them, and I forget. I don't think we actually find out in the episode.
I wonder if we're hinting at Borg here. I honestly don't remember.
They don't reveal it this episode, and we're doing it out of order, so we don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's a real mystery box garbage, is what it is.
But man, I do love at the end. So talk about how it leaves, because we talked about how it leaves like the Lele analog and how Futurama leaves Fry. Bender's arc also, I'm sorry, not Bender, but Tom Nuttall / the TNG equivalent of Bender. His arc ends with him saying, I'm going to be a folk singer again. And, I don't care that it's the future. I'll play my same old songs. They'll be new to the people. I'll probably be a bigger hit than I ever was. And I love that Picard humors him. Picard says, perhaps so. Anything is possible. Are you kidding me? This dude's going to get eaten alive.
My favorite.
We know no one listens to folk music. It's classical or nothing, bitch.
You're
or
right.
Jazz. That's
classical,
like all they do. Yeah.
Or like every now and then some like weird experimental sounding shit that they accredit to like some alien race.
Or Vic from DS9 singing Sinatra songs. Like you don't progress past, there's no Bob Dylan. They don't do Bob Dylan.
Yeah. They don't want any of that garbage. I love, by the way, that he asked Data to come along with him.
Why does he immediately love Data? That's so
I don't know,
interesting.
but I wish they had I wish the series took a left turn and just Data went with him, and then we never saw Data again. Like that was just the fate of Data, as he just goes off to hang out with some country singer.
Yeah. What he specifically says is, let's you and me hang and find a couple of low mileage pit woofies to build a dream with, or something like that.
Yeah, the guy is speaking in gibberish.
The guy's just speaking in
Picard,
tongues. Yeah.
By the way, my favorite detail of this whole episode is how little of shits Picard gives about any of them.
That's what this whole
it's
episode.
So funny.
It's so appropriate to Futurama too. He is essentially going like, look, I understand that a Lower Decks episode is playing out while I'm dealing with this. I don't care. Like, leave me alone.
It's funny because it's like, this is an amazing thing. He's like ready to punch that guy at certain points, but like this is incredible. Like if someone from like, what year did he say it was? He said it was like 2300. It was surprisingly soon. 2364. So like if someone from 400 years ago got unfrozen, we would want to talk with that person. We would be like, that would be really cool. And I love that Picard's like, whatever. Like he's mad that they even revived them and brought them on. Like, he's mad that they casually bring some, like, 3 people back from the dead.
Well, he specifically says something along the lines of, we unfroze the bodies and beamed them over. And he's like, wait, why? Why'd you bring them here, Data? They were already dead. What could have happened to them worse? Well, their ship was going to get pulled into the sun. And he's still like, but they were already dead, which is amazing because obviously they are then brought back to life easily by Dr. Crusher.
Yeah.
Which implies... that's so un-Picard that the potential of their life being snuffed out, he was like, well, it's after the 5-second rule. I don't care about that life anymore.
It also...
Or does he hate people from the 20th century? Because this episode is maybe the harshest. Like, it has a line, they're strange people, and they say, yes, nothing to redeem them. It makes you wonder how we survived the 20th century. And I understand that they got on the intercom and were a little annoying, but nothing to redeem them is a very harsh condemnation, especially when he never met the lady. Like, he never even interacted with her.
So I think this has to do with the fact that it was written, in the 20th century where, like, they're trying to take shots at themselves, right? Or, like, at the richest type of people. Because that's the thing about... the apocalypse that we don't like to think about is our apocalypse fantasy of like Mad Max. Everybody in Mad Max, they would be like millionaires because they're the people who survived. So they're the people who probably had bunkers.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like the people in the apocalypse, like your Book of Eli's, etc., that, like, including these people who are frozen, they're all going to be rich pricks. They're all going to be Elon Musk types. And that's, like, such a bummer. So, like, I do like that idea that they like, attribute it to the entire human race at the time. It would have been more fun for them to play off the fact that they're just, like, rich people.
And I think that's kind of my argument that I'll have going forward with TNG is that they go out of their way to be a progressive show, and they are, like, all those series broke so many boundaries that are very important, and the messages are spot on, which is part of what makes it Utopia. Is it was socially woke for the time compared to the stuff around it, and yet everything becomes dated. And I think one of the lessons that, like, we've started to ingest to some degree is that races aren't monoliths, and TNG still does that form of racism. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to even come down on TNG. I mean racism in the true, like, technical sense of, like, it's funny how many times, I can't remember, someone will be like, how could a Cardassian do that? Cardassians, I never could have, Wei Yun in DS9, sorry, I just watched it, goes, but the Cardassians can't do that. Founder, how could I have predicted that? All Cardassians are like this. It's as if they're playing Dungeons and Dragons and they're like, but his stat card said Klingon. He had to attack. And it's like, how many times have the characters proven that at their heart, they're individuals? Like, everyone breaks out of whatever mold. And yet it's interesting that their method of navigating the universe is still, you have this kind of makeup, you're from this planet, I will approach you this way. You're Ferengi, whatever. And I just think that's interestingly at odds with the idea of utopia.
I think it's ultimately like a comforting feeling to look back at like the 90s version of what a utopia is and for it to be dated. Because that means we're progressing, right?
Yep.
Like, that's good. That's very good. Because, Star Trek is like it's woke for its time, and it's still like, man... That's problematic shit.
But you're absolutely right, and there's that great shift in perspective. It's really you feeling that the human race is growing, like seeing the difference. So it's a good way to look at it.
We're supposed to be seeing like a very enlightened race, and like it's still as enlightened as the 90s can get. That's that's it. That's how it's going to be. I also just I feel like we breezed by it. Like when Tasha Yar got spat out by that goo and killed
Armis.
Yeah, why didn't Beverly just like revive her? Because they apparently can take people who've had like liver damage and embolisms and like horrific death, and like they've conquered death, as we've learned in this episode. Never comes up again. No one should ever die.
That's what I'm saying is even if you conquered conventional forms of death, even if you live 100,000 years, you could still conceptualize the fear of non-existence or being uneasy about you don't know what it's going to be like.
Right.
It's just crazy to me to say we don't fear death, even though we still die. I would feel like only truly immortal beings would not fear death.
Right. Or it implies when she's like, it terrified them, it implies that it's just not an issue anymore, as we see in the episode. Where it's
And
like,
yet,
oh yeah,
of
they
course-
used to fear death. Now it's like, you know, how we used to fear like wolves. It's like, yeah, because wolves were a big
Right.
problem.
Sure. Yeah, it's like if you can get to a doctor quickly, the odds that you'll survive are incredibly high, but the show fudges that whenever they need to. I'm thinking of a scene where a shapeshifter puts a sword through a guy's gut and he dies within seconds, and it just seems like...
Right.
And they just finished saying Klingons have excess organs and it's impossible to kill them because of the way their bodies are shaped. But oh well, you got the special artery spot or whatever.
It makes you realize that they probably could try harder with most deaths and they just don't feel like it.
They've become godlike in the fact that their casual medical decisions are so powerful compared to our doctors now in our time. Try as hard as they can, but let's be honest, a lot of it is still luck and chance, and if you had the right genetics for the thing that afflicted you or not. And they're like, well, we tried our best. Dr. Crusher can be like, I shouldn't have stopped to have a coffee from the replicator before I waved my whooshy wand over him. He would have been alive. Dang. Well, he's dead. It's there. You get this feeling that they have the casual power over life and death for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess they just don't give a shit about death. It goes back to they're just not scared of death, I guess. Maybe they're in a
let's
world.
See if that
maybe
bears out.
Yeah, maybe we've hit a point where they realize like, oh yeah, we had a phase where we kept resurrecting everybody, and we realized that it was haunting. Like when people didn't die, it was a real problem, and we like decided to just allow death to be a natural
That's
course.
interesting because the implication of the eugenics wars is that we did dabble with eugenics, or genetic modification and biomodification. It is something within our technical capabilities, and literally for the first time in the human history of humanity, I mean, we had a war about it, but it's a technology we could do that we actively decide to not do because it's too unhealthy.
We're just like, let's not.
In the 24th century, there's just laws like we don't do it. We don't genetically modify people. And I wonder if they could have gone through an off-screen cycle of like, yeah, we also used to resurrect people really far after being dead, but it creeped us out.
Yeah.
So now we only resurrect you if it's like a 10-minute rule. You know, if you've been brain dead for 10 minutes, we don't like to do it or something
Right.
like that.
Their version of the Supreme Court like figured out like an exact time in which someone can be resurrected. Yeah. I don't know if that's any of that's going to play out. That again, it's they have an episode where Worf gets paralyzed and they have no solution for it. They can conquer death, but like that, nope, can't do it.
Oh, right. His paralysis can't be reversed. I was going to say there was a solution. Kill Worf.
Kill
I
Worf.
thought you
Yes,
meant-
that's his
yeah.
solution. Yeah.
But you're saying, why can't they? She's like, well, the spine is
I
severed
forget.
or whatever.
Yeah,
And
I
they're like,
forget.
so
They do
Fix
like
it. I
they
don't
do
know.
they do fix it ultimately.
Yes,
but
of
it's
course.
very funny the levels of like. So every now and then they'll be like, "You have a broken wrist," and they'll like zap it, and they'll be like, "There you go." And it's like,
And
wait,
then
what
they'll
did you just
literally
do
have
to that
someone
person?
who's like, how do you know that the aliens stole time from us? Well, because my wrist still hurts, even after you would have fixed it. It's like,
Yeah.
but it didn't last time. The
Yeah.
medicine is very incoherent. I agree. That's a thing.
Here's what it is. Going back to what you were saying about the utopia like falling apart. As you think about it more, it's like Santa Claus, right? Like when you're a kid, you just believe in something like that. It's like magic, and then the more questions you ask, you realize, oh, it all falls apart. It doesn't work. That's kind of what this is that I remember Star Trek just being amazing, and then the more questions you ask like this, the more you're like, oh, this is unobtainable, at least in the way that they're making it out.
Yes, but, and I guess this is not waste of time. If people are unfamiliar, like the book Utopia, which the word utopia comes from, the way that book goes is it's told from the point of view of a guy who is, and this is from my recollection, but the gist is there, who's like sitting in a port or a dock, and he meets an interesting fellow from a far off land, and the fellow's like, I once visited a place that was a perfect society, and he's like, tell me about it. And then the whole book is almost as a thought experiment, what would be a perfectly just society? He starts to describe, like, they live this way, crime is punished this way, and it's an author trying to look at their like moral code of the time in which they were alive and say what would be truly fair and just society.
Right. And
the name for the place was just Utopia, topia meaning like city or village or whatever, and you just meaning like the ultimate topia. So I just think we got to bear that in mind, that's the exercise here. It's someone from their own time and place trying to say a direction we should head in, which is so interesting because so much sci-fi is a warning, like Big Brother, don't head in this direction.
Final factor in all of this, it's still a TV show. So like conflicts have to happen, right?
Right.
And so like if we truly were a utopian society, why would we even be going to space? Like why would we be starting wars at the neutral zone? We'd just be chilling out. Right? Like if we were a utopia, part of being a utopia...
The human need to explore is what Roddenberry would say, yeah.
Right. But I feel like that's just injected in so the plot could happen. Because there's what even...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Even in the episode Star Trek Insurrection, they run into a race that's so advanced where they're like, we were once like you. But they just hang out on their planet and better themselves the actual way Picard claims that we do. Right? They're just like, yeah, we just chill out here.
Cops who show up and end up murdering you, but they're like, well, you escalated. And it's like, but the escalation was because of your presence here. Like there's so many episodes where Picard goes to a place and they're like, we're xenophobic and we don't want anything to do with you. And he's like, oh, okay, well, we were just being curious and all. I'm sorry. And they're like, we now shoot at you. And Picard's like, man, I really didn't want to do this, but we're going to decimate your society.
Yeah, there's a lot of times.
But you didn't have to be exploring.
Yeah.
In the episode Clues, which is the one I'm thinking of.
Right. They don't need to be out there poking shit. There's the one with the space whale that they kill. Like, because, like, that's the ultimate thing is we pretend to be very, like, or in the
but it's
series they pretend to be like really high and mighty and like we're such a advanced society unlike these like Klingons or other warmongering aliens, and it's like, motherfucker, you're out there participating. You're doing
in these
this
streets.
Yeah.
You're in these space streets.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, you're no better than anybody else. We're all trying to push our boundaries further out into space. Like, just be goddamn happy with Earth. Just make Earth better.
There's too many of us.
Yeah.
Earth's lousy with us.
There's too many of us. That is true. Where are we? What's going on? What part of the show are we at?
I think we're wrapping out this segment, which I would like to do by just shouting out favorite lines and moments, because it's like last train leaving the station before we won't get another chance. So I want to point out that one of my favorite facts in all of Futurama is that Nibbler's shadow is visible under the table when Fry falls into the cryotube in the pilot. Always was, long before Nibbler was ever revealed to be sentient and a time traveler responsible for the cycle that gets Fry's Q waveform brain to the future where it needs to be to defeat the giant brains.
Here's my theory is that either that's an animation weirdness, or they just knew at some point they were gonna revisit it, right? They didn't know how.
With Nibbler, but they didn't know how exactly.
I don't know if they even... Oh, yeah, you're right. They probably mapped out that season at least, and Nibbler shows up a few episodes later.
Yes.
But I figured it's even more broad than that they were just like, we're going to do time travel, so let's set it up now. But yeah, that's awesome. Good on them.
Let's alternate so I don't steal them all. Or is this not do you not find this as delicious as I do?
I didn't have any like moments planned out here.
I just want to point out then the Futurama line where I knew this is a worthy successor to The Simpsons, and it's sci-fi. So I'm like, now we got a stew going. This is gonna be my favorite show. It's the joke. What if I refuse? Then you'll be fired. Fine. Out of a cannon into the sun.
It's so fucking good.
As a tween, that is the line that got me in. I was like, I am in now.
I like the significance of the fact that the first real conversation Fry has with someone from the future is Leela. I hadn't noticed that the first time, but it's like, it's immediate. Like, she's not the first person he meets technically, but he's the first person that he has anything close to like any human conversation with.
Hold on, is that blimp accurate? Why would a robot need to drink? I don't need to drink. I can quit anytime I want.
It's so good.
And of course, we got to point out Star Trek connections. Leonard Nimoy in the pilot do the thing. I don't do that anymore. He's just a head in a jar. And then immediately after one, a quite subtle one, is Samuel L. Jackson, Robot Cop, says, I'm going to get 24th century on his ass, which of course is I'm going to get medieval on his ass joke, but the 24th century is when Star Trek TNG takes place. So I love the implication that from Futurama's society's standards, Star Trek times were barbaric and medieval.
That is excellent. What a great detail.
Everyone looks down on the pasties.
Oh, yeah. Everybody hates... I mean, fucking old New York, underground.
Yeah. From now on, I'm going to bend what I want, when I want, who I want. Which made me realize that an interesting thing about the Futurama pilot is that the person with the strongest arc in terms of change is Bender, because Bender at the start is not the Bender we recognize. He's about to commit suicide, which is a weirdly out-of-character Bender thing.
Oh, I love when
Fry convinces Bender not to be a sad sack and to believe he can do anything he wants. I actually think secretly the Futurama pilot is Bender's story, and it's the story of the day he met a human who gave him the confidence to become Jerkwad Bender, like the Bender that we know. I don't think he was like that before he met Fry.
He goes into the suicide booth because he finds out that what he does creates suicide booths.
Yeah, and he just wants to die and drink, and then he meets a human who treats him as a friend, and he's like, this changes everything for me. So
he says, do you really want
to... Bender's eyes, and it's actually quite touching from Bender's point
and
of view.
He says, do you really want to be friends with a robot? And he's like, since I was 6.
Yeah, that's a good line too.
Yeah, that's a great fucking line.
My favorite, go ahead.
Oh no, it's weird watching also early season because their voices are different, slightly different.
Slightly.
It's got all those like early, and also just hearing Bender say "bite my shiny metal ass" and that just be the punchline.
That is his first line in the series.
That's his first fucking line, yeah. It's quaint in a nice way.
And then what I'm always looking for is what I call a cascade, meaning a series of lines that go setup, punchline, 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 where every subsequent line is a setup playing off the initial, is a punchline playing off the initial setup. And I learned that from Simpsons Futurama writers. And there's a great one in the pilot, which goes, Fry and Leela tenderly touch hands. Bender puts his hand on their hands improperly. She says, what's the matter with you? Setup. He says, I just wanted to be part of the moment. Punchline. She says, hey, he stole my ring. Punchline. He says, sorry. Well, that solves the mystery of the missing ring. Punchline. That calls for a drink. Punchline. He pulls out 3 beers and drinks them all himself. Punchline. That's so good as a run.
Yeah, that has to be the best moment of this episode. I watched, rewatching it, I laughed still. Like, it's so fucking good.
That solves the mystery of the missing ring is brilliant.
Because that perfectly sums up Bender as a character. All of those moments in like 30 seconds. It's so good.
Phenomenal. All right. Well, speaking of summing shit up in 30 seconds, no, that's not true. There's a whole nother segment after this. But let's do our short and quick segment, which is called Play Clip Now.
What 9? Knock it up a notch. Maximum warp. Damn!
Make it so. Engage. No, don't engage. Energize.
And this is the segment where we just argue briefly unless we just agree. But I just want to boil down, like, what do you think the shared theme was? Who do you think did it better and why? Which show wore it better?
In terms of, I guess, what are the parameters of what we're judging them on? Is it the subject of people being unfrozen in the future and dealing with that?
I feel like from listening to you, I got the impression that your thesis was about the idea of your circumstances changing from the past to the future and how that reflects your role, like your assigned role in society, and having that
in terms
context
of dealing
stripped
with
away from you.
Purpose, and so I would say no matter.
You should say whatever theme you want to.
I would say no matter what the parameters, it's the Futurama did it better. I think, mainly because we're dealing with a less good episode of TNG.
Okay. I think, or the theme that I keyed into the most, or resonated with the hardest, was the idea of, which is saying the same thing in a different way, but the way it came through my brain was like staying in the same place but changing your perspective. That is the nature of time travel, and it is the nature of how these character arcs play out. Yeah, so getting better all the time and changing your perspective, changing your reality by changing your perspective. Who do I think did it better? You're right. I want to say Star Trek, but it's Futurama.
It's Space Pilot. Yeah, it's a terrific pilot.
I want to say Star Trek because it takes itself seriously, but I actually find those poignant lines, or the pointed lines, like they're irredeemable, kind of like clunky and weird. Whereas Futurama's is super elegant.
Yes.
Hooray, I'm a delivery boy is poetically perfect.
I think when you're talking about making fun of the past through like a scenario in the future like this, and just talking about like, I don't know, like it just feels like Futurama is always going to be better because it's a comedy and it's easier to make points without it feeling really sweaty. Whereas Star Trek is serious, and when comedy comes up in Star Trek, it's kind of the worst parts.
Yeah, but I expect Star Trek to win handily in a number of cases when the theme is actually important and really matters.
When we're talking about
just
like
blew it off.
Yeah, when I think you were talking about how Gene Roddenberry has this like very elaborate, he planned it all out. I think the thing he didn't think about, and I have no evidence of this, I just suspect it, is the human factor. And I think that's where like we're talking about how, do they like Synthahol, do they not? I don't think he ever thought about that. And that's what the writers of Star Trek are filling in the blanks. And so I think Futurama is going to be a lot better when it comes to dealing with emotion. Whereas Star Trek's going to be a lot better when it comes to dealing with like, crazy sci-fi ideas, time loops, and so on. That's my guess.
Well said, my friend. Well, space, it seems to go on forever, but then you get to the end and a gorilla throws barrels at you, which does bring us to our final segment called something like
Open hailing frequencies.
Frequencies open, sir.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
And this is our fan Q&A segment, which I am super excited to have because Small Beans doesn't do any shit like this, and I always feel bad. So I love talking to fans.
Are you curating this? Because
I am.
Okay,
and the next time I figured you would.
All right, perfect. I made a note just not to look at any of the fan questions.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'll be honest, I'm freeballing it. Like, I'm just looking at the tweet I twatted and saying, what is a good question? And Oliver Allen at Another Pond Duck asks, if you had to send only one episode of Futurama and Star Trek to the aliens, which would it be?
Well, obviously The Inner Light for Star Trek, because that's literally about aliens sending out a message.
Oh, that's a good call.
Yeah, so there's a meta quality to it. It's also just what is commonly known as like the best Star Trek TNG
Yeah, that's
episode.
the one where Picard learns the flute. In case you are having trouble placing it.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
I need a moment for Futurama, though.
All right, then I'll go and we'll do a Dave sandwich. I would do Measure of a Man because I love courtroom drama, and I think Data, I know this is not, hey, my favorite X-Man's Wolverine. Sorry. Surprise, surprise. Data is my favorite. I know he's the obvious one, but he's the best one. And so I'd do Measure of a Man, and then for Futurama, unusual answer because I know I love the dog episode. Don't get me wrong. It feels important. I also love the brother episode. It feels important. But after, for personal reasons having to do with my own relationship with my mom, the one that actually gets me from Futurama is the one where he inserts himself into his mom's dream and her dream becomes real. And she actually gets to hug him in the past in her dream.
That's late season. Yeah,
that's late series,
one.
and people consider it an inferior touchy-feely one, but I don't. That's the one I would send.
Yeah. I think I would go the other way, and I would do, I think, like Roswell That Ends Well. One of the ones that's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just find that episode extremely funny. And it's also about aliens. And it'll warn them to stay the fuck away from us, right? Because we'll cut them open. And they can see our might with the nukes. It's got everything.
Oh, here's a good one. Down Home Chicken at Chicken Random, you know Down Home Chicken Peacock, asks, if you could swap one character from each show to the other, which ones would be the best fit? Yeah, who are you swapping crews?
Best fit?
Best fit or funniest, they asked. It's either or.
Best fit, I feel like Leela would probably do fine in a TNG universe, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. She's a Kirk.
She's a
For
Kirk.
sure.
Fuck, I kind of want to put Worf in Futurama because I feel like he'd also fare surprisingly well.
I want to put Q in Futurama because I think Q is the most cartoon-like and already exists in a world of inconsistencies and logical fallacies, which would be fine for him. And I also think John Delancey's pretty funny.
Sure.
And then I would definitely, because we're already rotating the doctors in and out, and the doctor's always a gimmick character in Star Trek. Like, oh, it's a hologram doctor.
Right.
Oh, it's a so-and-so doctor. It's a Borg or whatever. So you got to go Zoidberg. Season 2, Zoidberg in for Pulaski. I think that would be amazing.
Oh, shit. That would be, not knowing anything about human anatomy. Oh, fuck. Yeah, that's
Doesn't
great.
need to, really, in the Star Trek universe.
No, doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Here's a good one. Kieran Dixon at Magical Dorkboy asks, who would win in a fist fight between Data and Bender?
Oh, I don't think that is a good one because I would say hands down Data, right?
Do you think Data... Are you assuming Data's will? I feel like Data would be like, I shall not fight you, sir.
Oh, yeah, but
and Bender would shoot him or something.
He would disable Bender easily, though. Data is the more sturdy. Bender is clunky. That's the whole thing about Bender. He's not a very good robot. So I feel like Data would easily incapacitate Bender.
I'd give it to Bender because I think he's going to play dirtier.
He's going to play dirty?
Yeah, I think he'll just cheat. Which
By
I don't
the
know
way,
if I'm allowed to endow him with cheating, but yeah.
I feel like I'm going to bring this up a few times, but no one really appreciates how deeply terrifying Data is. Like, from the perspective of, like, going back, like, to the movie First Contact, where she's in the silo and she's shooting and doesn't know what Data is, and he gets shot 1,000,000 times and keeps moving, and then jumps down, is just like, hello.
Right.
And he speaks so calmly, and, like, we know he's fine, but she doesn't. He could be about to murder her. He seems like a demon.
Oh,
he
dude,
is
it reminds
pale,
me.
invulnerable, and calm. And the calmness is the scariest part.
A robotics lab just invented this inflatable snake fiber optic eyeball robot.
Oh, I saw.
That they can send into rubble to like rest, and it's like a tentacle with a camera at the tip, so it can weasel into rubble, see you with the tip of its eye, and then like lift the rubble and save people, right? So when it finds you, it means you're saved. But imagine being like under rubble and a robot tentacle with a camera on the tip comes in. You're not going to be like, those are the rescue workers.
No, you're going to be like, oh, great. They have robots now. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
That's literally like War of the Worlds, that scene with the fucking tentacle. That's
oh yeah, I got to watch that. No? Okay.
Oh, it's a Spielberg film, so there's
All
a
I know
level
is
of quality.
it has the longest Tom Cruise running shot of any Tom Cruise running shot.
Honestly, yeah, and that is a good scene. War of the Worlds is pretty good. It's pretty good because it's Spielberg, right? Like it's it's fine. I'm not gonna knock War of the Worlds. It's fine. Go watch it.
Ian Henry at Hood_Ian says, which Star Trek or Futurama character would you have most liked to have seen get their own spin-off show? And I'm going to challenge us to pitch a premise of some kind.
Okay.
I'm going to limit it to TNG because otherwise Quark would win. But that's too obvious.
This also feels too obvious, but Guinan.
Oh, like a listening show? Like Guinan through the ages, listening to
Guinan
different
through the
people?
ages, exactly. Guinan, like, kind of like we'd have her hanging out with Mark Twain, all that shit.
It's Quantum Leap, but she earned it because she actually lived through. You just cut to any point in her life. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, you could do like it's a meditative process where it's like old Guinan looking back of like times in her life, and each episode is a different era and different moment of her adventures because she's so old. So you could have cameos from TNG people.
Yeah. Whereas I gotta go La Barbara, Hermes' wife.
Oh,
I
shit.
think is the character from Futurama.
She is funny.
That gets the least play, that makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
So I would probably expand on, I would do like a really like raunchy, reality leaning thing about La Barbara being torn between Hermes and Barbados Slim back when their bodies were like tight limbo bodies, champion limbo bodies. That's what I want to see, like a Love Island or a Paradise Island, but with La Barbara as the Bachelorette or what have you.
Yeah,
that'd be good. Or like a spunky Amy Wong, like at school, because it's crazy that they say Amy is. Their establishing thing for Amy is she's the professor's unpaid intern who he hired because she has his blood type.
Yes.
And then she stays part of the gang for 7 years. And they never really explain why she gets to keep hanging out or what her deal is. So I could see more backstory. There seems like there's room there to flesh out Amy.
You know what?
Amy makes me laugh with her guzz and her buzz and her zuzz.
I feel like the obvious Futurama one. The obvious Futurama, I feel like, is Zap Brannigan, right? Like,
well, now you got Star Trek: The Original Series again, right?
Right, that's true. But him going on adventures and so on and so forth, like that just, that makes a lot of sense.
Kif and Worf is a good pairing.
Ooh, yeah. Kif would also love Star Trek World. I think
that's
Kif
true. Where things actually are the way he acts, like he expects them to be. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the best ones. No, thank you for all your questions. I would ask more, but
we should
want to. I don't want to. Run out. Is that what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should spread them out, right?
Because there's some questions that I'm like, someone will ask that question again, and we should do it then, and it'll be great. Yeah. But please write in. We love to hear from you, and we love your great questions and comments about Star Trek / Futurama. Now you know what the show is, so you can.
Where should they write in? Should they don't just tweet to us all willy-nilly?
No, I think every time before we're going to record an episode, we'll probably tweet, hey, we're about to record an episode. You got any questions for us, right?
Yeah. Or just leave a comment, right? Like wherever you're listening to this. If there's a comment section, maybe we'll look at them. I don't know.
eyebrow raise? Maybe?
Yeah.
Visit our Patreons.
Or like mail them in like a letter. Write us a letter.
If I got a letter with a Futurama Star Trek related question, I would read it.
Yeah, I would probably
You got
read it.
me. Are you happy? You broke me down. Well, we're both hosts, so we both are probably having the impulse to ask the other one, where can people find you?
Oh, we're at the
end?
end. We're at the end.
I think we're done, dude.
Okay, how many plugs do you have? What if we alternate? Or like we say them at the same time? No, that's probably not good.
It is.
Let's
I can't tell if you're joking or not, but we may. Is there anything you're excited about that Gamefully Unemployed has on the horizon? This could be a
I don't know when
platform
this
for
is
that.
coming out, but like
2 days from now.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. We're covering the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League right now, and Tom and Jeff Watch Batman.
You are
I
covering
actually,
the shit out of it.
I haven't listened to our own episodes yet. I'm waiting because
That's a.
Well, I'll explain.
Okay.
I haven't watched the Snyder cut yet. I'm waiting because I'm going to be a guest on the final episode, and I don't want to watch the Zack Snyder cut more than once. So I'm waiting until right before we record because that shit's going to leave my body after I see it. But yeah, I also want to plug this show that we're doing right now. And so, yeah, just go to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed and you see all our junk. That's it.
Yep, and you can check out the other half of the apps over at patreon.com/smallbeans, where we are currently working on, let's see, a second episode of Beantown, our audio sketch series. That's probably the thing I'm most excited about that's coming out soon.
I have goosebumps now. No, Beantown's fucking amazing.
Beantown's very fun.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Thank you, dude.
I love it.
And I love this, and I love what we've done here.
Yeah, and I love Star Trek.
This. Yeah, I do.
Keep watching the skies. Let's not go with that. That's terrible.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.